Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show, live. Happy to have you back in the third week in January. So we're going to crank it down the music a little bit and just say, could you be loved? We are happy to have you back at this third week in January. Welcome back to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show, live, coming at you guys live out of Northern Virginia. And we're just happy to see that you're back, happy to see that everyone is still here, healthy. And well, we know in the world we lost some folks this year, but hey, we know people are going to be, going to a better place. But that's how it is. That's how life is. But you know what, folks? There's a lot going on out here in the country. A lot going on here in the in the world, and we try to come here once a week and talk about things at the VADSBC show live, where we talk about the issues of concern here in Virginia, issues of concern here in the country and around the world. And one of the things that we really want to talk about today is we kind of start off with our regular sort of introduction to things. And usually I start off by just introducing my co-host, who is Erin Porcher. She's the interim chair for the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus in Louisiana. She is not going to be on the show today, but we're expecting to have Erin back sometime soon when she's able to make it. Everyone's busy doing what they need to do to take care of their family, to take care of their businesses, and to do what they need to do for taking care of themselves. And just speaking of taking care of themselves, I really want to talk about making sure you are taking care of yourself and you're doing everything that you need to do to keep yourself safe, because we still haven't quite got past this COVID scenario, and we're still dealing with things with that. So we just want to make sure that everybody's doing what they can to keep themselves happy, to keep themselves healthy, and to make sure that, we're going to have you around here for a long time. Also, I wanted to just say, around that note, as I say every time, listen, folks, make sure you've gone out there, you've gotten your vaccinations. Hopefully you don't want to catch that COVID virus. And if you do catch it, you want to make sure that you will survive and you're healthy, because you never know where you lie in that whole COVID virus scenario. So that a COVID virus scenario, if you've gotten your 2 shots and you've gotten your booster, if you should contact COVID, then you have the ability to more or less not to get too ill. Maybe in some cases, some people really never even get any symptoms. They just kind of just get over it. But we're rolling the dice every time that happens. But one of the ways that you can make sure the odds are on your side, at least for me doing my due diligence, I thought about it and I said, I'm going to take the vaccinations and I'm going to take the booster. Before that, I never actually took any flu shots. I didn't take any flu shots at all, but the COVID virus is not the same as a regular flu shot. So I don't want to confuse people with that. But the point I was making is I never took any additional things. The vaccine for COVID is more like vaccines you take so that you don't get measles or the mumps or polio, any of those sorts of things. That's really what those vaccines are all about, to make sure that your body is exposed in a way that you are going to be able to fight off any of those viruses, and your body knows what it is and knows what to do to stop it. The other thing I wanted to talk about is make sure you continue to do what you need to do. If people are still doing business, they're still traveling, doing vacations in a limited fashion. But what you really need to do out there is just make sure that you're still doing what you need to do to keep yourself safe. Wear your mask, put 6 feet between you and whoever else you're dealing with, or, as close as you can get. I don't always get 6 feet, but, I give people their room. I give people their space. I wear my mask, not just for me, but for other people. And, I'm also diligent about making sure I, wash my hands, disinfect my area as best I can. That's really all you can do as an individual, and encourage other people to do what they need to do. So the second thing I want to talk to you folks about is uh, reminding you that it's Woke Wednesday. That's right. It's Woke Wednesday. Woke Wednesday, as I call it. People try to say, hey, what's all this woke stuff? Well, the woke stuff is just simply saying, hey, make sure you're paying attention to what's going on around you. Make sure that you're paying attention to the news as well as your job and your family. You just don't want to have your head down just with that sort of pushing that grindstone up the hill, but never really looking around to say, hey, what's going on around me? What are things that could affect me, could affect my family? And a lot of that has to do with your local, your state, and your federal policies and things that are going to affect you. While you got your sort of nose to the grindstone, you still need to know that, hey, somebody's not trying to sneak up behind me and get me off track or get surprises that I'm not ready for. You have your due diligence you need to do as a citizen here in the United States, and as a resident in whatever state or territory that you live in, when you have to take time to support the things that you believe in that are going to protect yourself, your family, your business, and your community. So make sure that you're taking time to do that. All those things are important. The other thing I wanted to tell you about Woke Wednesday is that, hey, I'm going to roll right into this Woke Wednesday thing and talk to all these people who are business owners out there, or potential business owners, or people out there that want to be business owners or want to support small business owners here in Virginia and across the country. One of the things that you need to understand is, in order for us to continue to be successful in our efforts as small business owners, we need to make sure that we are paying attention to policies that affect ourselves and our families and our businesses, and making sure that we're getting fair opportunities to live the American dream, not just for ourselves, but as I said, for our families, for our businesses, and for our communities. And that requires something of you other than just keeping your nose to the grindstone. Now, as I understand it, being a small business is tough enough, but outside of that, you got to do more than just run that biz, man. You gotta you gotta take care of other things. Some of you all got kids in college. Some of you people have kids in grade school or whatever, and all the other activities with your life and your family and your spouse and your that goes on in life. I understand people are busy, but listen. Don't let all those things cloud too much for things that you need to look to see what's happening on the horizon, look to see what's coming over the hill so that you don't get caught off guard. Same thing you do for your family, your businesses. You need to do that for policies and for being a good citizen here in the United States, in my opinion, which is voting, but more than just voting, knowing who to vote for, why you're voting, and understand why you do what you do. In Virginia, they're getting ready to start a new session here in the House of Delegates and the Senate, and they're getting ready to get that started. So there's lots of laws and things and bills that are being proposed, that are going to be proposed, that are going to affect you. And it's right here in your own local jurisdiction, your local state delegate or representative, or your local state senator who lives right in your community, who's going to be making decisions about you and your life and your business. Who's going to be responsible for things that affect you and affect your children and affect your businesses. So it's important to stay woke. Yeah, you don't like the word, but it's true. You got to stay woke. I mean, if you're running a business, somebody walks into your store, you can't be asleep at the cash register, right? No, you can't. You got to be aware of what's going on in your business, aware of what's going on with your customers, and aware of being able to get more customers. So I just tell people to, keep an eye out for these things still on a civic standpoint. And one of the things that we have to keep an eye out for in this business is in Virginia and around the country is making sure you understand what's on the table now with voting rights. What's on the table, probably some of the newest things you may have heard of having to do with a Supreme Court justice, a federal U.S. Supreme Court justice getting ready to retire. There's going to be a new justice appointed. And as we well know, those Supreme Court justice appointees like it or not, can affect our lives and your lives in a big, big way. And one of the ways that they do can affect one of the things that's coming up right now is when we talk about voting rights, because it's the Supreme Court justices before with voting rights, as I showed on the screen, that affected why we're having to redo the voting rights now in this country. Uh, Back in 2013, the Supreme Court made a decision that removed the preclearance provision from voting rights. And what that preclearance provision did in voting rights is it made sure before anybody made any changes to any laws concerning voting in all 50 states and U.S. territories that vote, uh, it needed to have a 180 day prior to any election. And that's really, as you see on the screen, when I talk about the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, basically what it does, it puts back what the Supreme Court took out was the preclearance requirement that the Department of Justice needed to review any changes to federal laws concerning to any changes to any law, state or federal, before they could be changed, and gave them an opportunity to say, the Department of Justice to weigh in on that, to make sure that you didn't have things that happened in the past with other jurisdictions around the country that were suppressing people's right to vote, that were suppressing specifically African Americans' right to vote around the country, and doing things, as I've said before in prior podcasts and live streams, that would make it difficult or either impossible for an American to vote. And particularly how this came about was really having to do with African Americans voting in the South and around the country, not just in the South, but there were also places around the country where they would either do all sorts of things that would prevent people from unfettered access to their right as American citizens to vote for the candidate of their choice. And as I said in past shows, some of the things that they would do is have poll taxes, or either they would make people recite the Constitution word for word, or count beans in a jelly jar. Well, that's sort of obvious stuff that was done back at that time prior to the Voting Rights Act. Now that the preclearance has been taken away, they're doing something that is the same, but some people refer to it as Jim Crow 2.0. And what that is they are taking polling stations out of people's neighborhoods and making it difficult for them to even get to a polling station by having it 25 miles away, 20 miles away from their neighborhood, limiting the hours that voting stations are actually open, preventing people to use absentee voting, which simply allows people to vote by mail as opposed to having to be there in person, or just doing other things of that nature that made it easy for people to just simply go down and vote. So I won't name all those things, but I've named quite a few, and I've stated those things of what people are doing. And that's really when we talk about the HR 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which is passed in the United States House of Representatives, that had gone to the Senate. What it really did is saying, hey, everything that the Supreme Court took away concerning preclearance in 2013, that act restores that. And then you have HR 1, and HR 1 really has to do with And let me get the right one up. HR 1 has really to do with even doing more to make sure people have access to voting. By giving people a guaranteed 2 weeks of early voting, restoring the full protections of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which is the pre-clearance piece I told you about earlier. This was taken away in 2013. And also making sure that states have enough voting machines and resources for them, protections, and allowing people not to be banned from the voting polls just because they didn't vote in one particular election. They go in to vote the next election and they find out their name's not on the list. These are all things that people try to do, or that our opponents are trying to do, to prevent Americans from voting without any sort of uh, um, obstacles in their way, normal obstacles, things that are not normal obstacles, where they're making laws for where people can't get food or water in line, and then they're reducing the number of polling locations or polling machines, and people who are working every day, they can't afford to sit in line for 8 hours, 6 hours simply to cast their vote. They have to go to work. I mean, these are all the sort of things which people categorize as voting suppression. And voting suppression is not outright how it used to happen with Jim Crow back in the prior to the 1960s 65 Voting Rights Act. This is more very straightforward and targeted uh, voting suppression for specific communities. For example, outlawing souls to the polls, which basically people would organize from on a Sunday after church, and then they would go to vote right after church. So they're closing voting stations on the weekend pretty much eliminates that, because obviously Sunday is a weekend. So these are examples of what it is. And what we're trying to do here now is just give people an idea of what this is. And people would say, well, guess what? I can vote. I don't see what's the problem. I don't have any problem voting. Well, it's not so much that you don't have a problem voting. Let me give you an example, tell you about gerrymandering. For example, things have gotten so sophisticated with technology that they're able to create districts where they're targeting right down to zip codes and street addresses, how they're redistricting things and drawing congressional districts, which determine how many people from a particular community will be able to vote in a particular district, so that a certain candidate will have people that they already know are going to vote for them. And then they will take districts where they don't want people to have representatives, and they will divide them up either by street or zip code. So one, there's not enough influence for them to really determine who's going to be their congressperson, and also so that they can't also be in a particular district where they really ought to be, so that they can elect a congressperson who does support the things that they do. But so they make all these weird looking, and that's what they call it, gerrymandering districts, that more or less allows the politicians to pick the voters instead of the voters picking the politician, as the system should work. These are the sorts of things that are all parts of voter suppression. These are the sorts of things, when you talk about HR 1 with the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act tries to address, when you talk about HR 1, which is the For the People's Act of 2021, tries to address those issues, among other things. And you also have the bill in the Senate that was up there, which was Senate Bill 2747, which is the Freedom to Vote Act. These are all the things that have been Democrats are trying to get passed. They have passed them in the House of Representatives, but they've also are now trying to get it passed in the Senate, in which, if you were not aware, you can be aware of last week, that was preventing, there were 52 senators that voted against the Voting Rights Act in the Senate. Uh, the head of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, uh, held the vote because he wanted to get people on record saying either you're supporting something that is the right thing to do, which is allowing all Americans to vote, and legislation that allows that to happen, or you're not. So, what was important at that time is to get people on record for that, because now what you have is you have people basically on record saying, I don't support this. And remember, this isn't a Democratic or a Republican thing. This is an American thing. All Americans have the right to vote as American citizens in the states that they live in the territories that they live in that are U.S. territories. It doesn't really matter, and nobody should be messing with that process. But what is even more insidious about some of these laws that states are passing, they are not only passing the laws that make it difficult for people to actually cast their vote, but they're also passing laws where they have partisan counting of the votes, where people who have been in charge from a nonpartisan perspective, the people who volunteer their time to run these election polls and everything else, and it's not based upon what party you're in or what interests you have. It is nonpartisan. But some of these states were people who did not vote for or did not support unfettered voting rights. Basically, you're saying, well, even if you do get enough people to win, we are going to count the votes, and if we don't like the outcome, we're going to throw stuff out or we're going to do whatever, which is just completely ridiculous. I mean, that completely subverts the whole thing that a democracy is all about, because having access to the polling place, having access to free, unfettered access to having your vote cast and having your vote counted is what a democracy is all about. If you don't have that, then you don't have a democracy anymore. What you have, if you don't have that, is a dictatorship or an autocracy. And that's not something that we, as Americans, my great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents who have been in this country since, going back to the 1700s or before, have fought in wars, and Americans generally have fought in wars from the establishment of this country and the American Revolutionary War, right through to the various different things we've done to support these things in World War I, World War II, the other conflicts that came after that, people who have given the full measure of their lives and have sacrificed their lives to protect those things in this country and those democratic ideals. You don't want anybody coming up after the fact and saying all these people who have shed blood for this now don't even have the right to vote. And I tried to in prior podcasts, and I won't go over it now. You can actually go and look at some of the podcasts that I put out there earlier. My father's an Air Force veteran, almost, 30 years almost in the Air Force. And my uncle's in the Army, the same thing, retired Army officer. And my other uncle is retired United States Coast Guard. Sisters and brothers and nieces and nephews the same. Your right to vote doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, where you live, what you look like, where your parents or grandparents came from. None of that makes you an American. What makes you an American is the fact that you're born in this country or you're naturalized in this country and you believe in the Constitution of the United States and all that is within it. Because we are a country of laws, not a country of men or women. We're a country of laws that gives everybody due process and the right to the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It I guess I'm just trying to say what I say every week when I get on here, how important this is. This is really challenging uh, the United States and what we've stood for more than 200 plus years. So listen, folks, I tell you already, as I tell you every week, don't get discouraged, be encouraged. You want to be able to agitate, activate, and do what you need to do. So my call to action to you is make sure you're paying attention. Make sure that you're woke. When I say woke, make sure that you're taking time as a call to action to call your congressman and tell them that I'm for voting rights in this country, and I'm for you passing that in the House of Representatives, in the United States Senate, and getting it to the desk of the president for him to sign. Not only am I calling you, leaving you this message, I'm also woke and I'm looking and I'm paying attention. Do the right thing. So, folks, stay encouraged, is what I'm telling you. Don't be discouraged, because there's plenty of what you need to do uh, out there for you to do. And I haven't begun to even talk about all the other things that are dependent upon your right to vote. So when you talk about getting the George Floyd Act passed, dealing with anything around police reform or social acts, or you talk about anything dealing with the environment, around climate control, when you talk about anything dealing with a woman's right to vote, a woman's right to determine what happens with her own body, to numerous other issues, all of these things are dependent upon you having the right to vote. If you don't have the right to vote, and you don't have any ability actually to to excuse me, that was an accident. I clicked the wrong button. To be able to determine what representatives go to the United States House of Representatives and which representatives go to the United States Senate, and also who actually becomes the president of the United States. And when those elected politicians go to the House and the Senate and the executive's office, they're carrying with them the will of the people, what it is that the people, the majority of the people in the country, would like for them to do. So in order for them to have your voice heard, it all starts with voting rights. And that's why people fought so hard, and we fought in the Civil War and the rest, and everything else that happened, is so people could have the right to represent themselves in their state, local, and federal governments, and to run their businesses, to protect their family, to build legacy wealth, and to affect not just affairs that happen in this country, but those affairs that happen outside of this country. Because remember, again, I like to give the short civic lessons. The United States has three separate powers. You have the executive office, which is the president of the United States, where he is a chief diplomat. He is also the chief. He's also the head of the Department of Defense, or he's also the person who is in charge of making sure that the laws of the United States are carried out. Whether he's the commander-in-chief, chief diplomat, or making sure laws are carried out, that's his job. He doesn't make laws, he carries them out. A lot of times people will say, well, it's the president's fault. In a lot of cases, well, that may be true if he has something that he can't actually, he's not executing that he's supposed to execute. But then you also have the other branch, which is the legislative branch. The legislative branch is the branch that makes the laws, that passes the laws in the House of Representatives and the Senate. They are responsible for passing those laws to get to the president's desk for signature. And the policies that the people bring forth are through their representatives in the House and the Senate. And that happens on a local, state, and federal basis. And finally, the last branch of government is the judiciary. So you have the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. The judiciary is our court system, where you have your local courts, your state courts, and your federal courts, with the Supreme Court of the United States being the highest court, and the president having the right to appoint, with the consent of the Senate, his appointments to the Supreme Court. And the courts in particular are so important, as I said earlier in the podcast, because they can either say that a particular law that the legislative body has passed either meets constitutional muster, as you hear them say, or what they really mean is this is in accordance with the Constitution of the United States. If it is unconstitutional, for whatever reason, they'll strike it down or have other things they say they want them to go back and do. And in this particular case, when we talk about voting rights, what they said about voting rights is, well, if you, in 2013, if you think pre-clearance is still needed, then just make another law and put it back in place. That's what was going on last week about, okay, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act passed the Senate, passed the House of Representatives, got to the Senate. We're putting this back in place. And then we had a couple of folks from the Democratic Party that defected from us, and you had all 50 Republicans, or 49 Republicans, how many there are in the Senate. The Democrats control the Senate, basically vote against something that was not a Democrat or Republican thing, was really an American democratic institution thing, saying, hey, don't mess with people's vote. Don't mess with the vote after it happens. Here's the laws. It's the same for everybody in all 50 states and territory. We're done. Let's move on to other things. This is where we're at right now. And this is why I try to get here every week and explain these things. And we're still waiting on our guests to come on the show. When our guest finally is able to get onto the show, they can. I'll bring them in. But until then, I'll continue to talk about all of these different things. Matter of fact, what I'll do right now too is, because this is a live stream, I can look at either Facebook or some of these other places where people can actually make comments. And if I have any comments that I see out there, I'll try to answer them. Because I'm actually running the show by myself, I don't have someone else who's actually looking there right now. So I got to take a look myself here, which is okay. Just need to get to it and see if there's any comments out there. I see there's people out there live who are watching the show. And I'm just going to go and see what they have to say. It's always kind of peculiar watching yourself and say. So right now, we don't have anybody making comments. Folks sometimes make comments while the show is live. Other times they make comments afterwards, or they go view it. This is probably a good time for me to explain a little more about who the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus is. And the caucus, the show streams live on Facebook. It streams live on Twitter. It streams live on LinkedIn, and it streams live on YouTube. And then those shows are actually online after we finish with this hour broadcast. So all the shows that you really want to go back and look at, you can go look at YouTube and just put in VADSBC.com. You can see what shows we've done. We've done about 20 shows. Or you can go to YouTube, or you can go to, what did I say before? Facebook. And at our Facebook webpage, they're all listed there as well. I'm going to probably try to contact our special guests, because usually I bring them in about a half an hour in. The fact that they're not on yet means that they may be, or he may be, having some challenges getting on. But if he doesn't come on, I can continue to talk, or to continue to try to maybe answer any questions that people may have about the things that I've been talking about with the Voting Rights Act. But also, let's go to some other areas. Some of the other areas where I know people have an interest is, and we'll have some upcoming shows on it. We'll have some shows on college loan repayments, how those things are really affecting the millennials and the parents, because a lot of times, and again, voting rights really determine all of that, because if the government wants to either suspend some or all of the student loan debt, and people also, and student loan debt is really kind of a misnomer. I'm changing the subject a little bit, because really you're talking about student and parent debt, because a lot of these students don't sign for the loans, their parents do, because of something that's called FAFSA. And that's also a federal thing too. With the FAFSA requirement, the parents have to actually fill out the information and do that. And hold on a second, I'm going to try to see, our guest is trying to get on here, but we'll talk because I'm trying to fill some space here. But he's having difficulty getting on. I'm going to see if I can get him online here. I'm going to text him the link here, and okay, here we go. Let's see here. I'm going to have to send him this link. It's always a challenge here. Sometimes people have a little difficulty. That's okay. And I'm going to help out our guest here in order to get him online here. Let's see here. Let's see. All righty. Hang in there with me, folks, as we try to help our guest out, our upcoming guest here, get online. Let's see here. All right. Let's see here, and get rid of this, and get rid of this. Try to get him the information that he needs here, the easiest way we can. Not sure this is going to actually work. And I'm trying to help him out here. Hold on with me, folks. I try to get this done here. Okay, let's see here. All right. Let's see here. All right. And let's see here. Try to get him this link here. Okay. Okay, so I think Mr. Burroughs is out there, sir. I've just sent you the link that you need to use in order to get on to the show. We still have some time here. It's about 7:40, and we're on for another 20 minutes live. So hopefully, Mr. Burroughs, if you're listening on the live stream, go to your phone. I'm sending you the link that you need in order to get to the live stream and get you on the show, sir. Also, I'll try to forward this to you again in an email. And folks, guess what? This is what happens when you're doing a live show. So you have to kind of work with what you got here in order to make things happen. Sometimes there's some challenges. That's okay. We'll get it done. As I try to get him the information again. Okay. All right. Let's see. There we go. And link to show. There we go. Let's put that on there. Now, all right, there we go. Let's go ahead and send that email off again. Email sent. Also sent you an email, sir. So hopefully you'll find the link and you come on the show. So, folks, again, I do want to say to you, as we try to help our guest, his name is Mr. Eugene Burroughs, to get on to the show. There's some technical difficulties, but we'll overcome it. But until then, let me talk to you a little more about, which I know is on a lot of parents and students' minds, which is student loan debt. And really, they should call it parent and student loan debt, because the loans that the federal government puts out there are called Parent Plus loans, and because of a system that we have called FAFSA. Because when kids go to school, they don't have any money. Nope. How many 18-year-olds do you know can pay anywhere from $10,000 to $40,000 a year for college coming out of high school, unless they're extremely wealthy? And if they have that kind of money at 17 or 18, it's probably not their money, it's their parents' money. And guess what? The government knows that. So with the FAFSA form, they look at all the assets that the parents have, and then they determine whether or not they're going to get any sort of grants. And a grant is free money. We'll do a special show on this. It's free money that you get from the government and to go to school. And what the government has had for many years, they had something that was known as Pell Grants. And Pell Grants came from our tax money that you pay, that the government just gives you to pay for your education. Why? The same reason that they do when they back new research in companies or give subsidies to other corporations for oil or farming or you name it. The reason why our representatives vote to a subsidy is a grant. It's the same thing. It's your tax money. They decide who's going to get it. So when they decide not to fund Pell Grants to the point where they're paying for students college tuition, then what happens next is the government also has something that used to be called the National Student Direct Loan, or now what they call it is the loans out there that the government backs so that students can get loans from the private sector. And therein lies the problem, in my opinion. If you let Wall Street into the student loan business, which it did, I think that was back in 1994, 96, then the loans are very difficult to get, one, charged off, or for a person to basically claim any sort of legal thing where they would be able to not have to pay the loan. The best thing to have for students and parents, in my opinion, is simply grants, Pell Grants. When I went to college, the Pell Grant that I was able to get, being independent from my parents, paid for really most of my school education. I only had to get a small loan, maybe $2,500 a year. And I was able to get what was known in Virginia as a, what do you call it? They called it, because I went to a private school, by the way, I think I've got my shirt on now, I do, Hampton University, or at the time I was there, Hampton Institute. If you went to a private school and you lived in that state, then you would get money from the state, because since you didn't go to a state school, your parents and you still paid money to the state that funds state schools, so that you would use some of your own tax-paid money to pay for your college education in forms of grants. They would give them to you. But what has happened since then is whenever you, I think history bears this out, whenever you let large financial institutions get involved with banking in student loans, especially loans that you can't charge off through bankruptcy or anything else, there's a very, very low, very small margin of a reason why you don't have to pay a student loan debt back. So the banks were more than happy to lend out money. But the problem is, what I noticed is that when they're lending out that money and tuitions went up from maybe 8,000 a year when I was in college 35, 40 years ago to now where the average tuition is anywhere from, $18,000 to $50,000 a year. Well, let's just go at the low end. Let's say it's $18,000 a year. 4 years of college, let's round it. I'm average at math. Let's just make it 20. So if it's $20,000 a year to go to college and you got 4 times 20, that's $80,000. Yep. If you go to school, the average 4-year degree is 4 years, and that's $80,000. If you have 2 or 3 kids, can you really afford to pay $240,000 for your kids to go to school? Or $160,000 for 2 kids to go to school, state schools? And by the way, the Pell Grant, I think it got increased by maybe $2,000 in the years that Obama was there, which took it from $4,000 a year when I was in up to now, which I believe is $6,000. So even if they were eligible to get the Pell Grant, because of the new FAFSA requirements, most people are not eligible for Pell Grants. You really have to be destitute to get that money now. You just can't be independent from your parents. Most people have to either have their parents have saved $80,000, $90,000 a kid for them to go to school, or they have to have some sort of scholarship, or they have to sign some type of loan. And either the parent signs the loan or either the student signs the loan. In some cases, if you get loans outside of the federal backed loans and you go to some of these private sector loans, the parent definitely has to sign it. And now student loan debt in this country is in the trillions of dollars, and it surpasses credit card debt. And it basically has changed the ability for our students to be able to start a business. Because if they went to undergraduate school and they went to graduate school, you've got even more money on top of more money. And in order for you to start a business or buy a home or even in some cases get married, I mean, kids are living at home with their parents more. Kids are not buying houses when they're at certain ages, when they get to maybe their late 20s or early 30s because of the student loan debt. So why is voting rights important? Well, if you want to make sure your tax money that you're paying to the government affects your student loan debt of student and parent loan debt, then you have to elect politicians who believe in those same policies. So when they get there in the House of Representatives and they get there in the Senate, and there's a president that's there, you can say, hey, you've been able to write this debt off for other subsidies. Subsidy is another name for a grant. This money is given in hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars every year. Just do a little math, look at the budget that we have every year in the country, and you'll see, well, there's money there to pay that, to make it easier for students. And really, it's not so much that I think, that the students and the parents need this, because they do, but I'm saying they're simply now are going to take money that was once going for student debt, and they're now going to be buying houses and starting businesses, which is a better thing. And folks, guess what? Our special guest is here. I'm so happy. And it's 7:49, almost 7:50, but guess what? I want to introduce this gentleman, just so everybody knows who he is. I was telling you his name is Mr. Eugene Burroughs. And let me put his picture up on the screen here. Mr. Burroughs is does tax preparation, bookkeeping, financial planning. He's been in the business for 40 years. Fantastic gentleman. And I want to take the time right now to introduce Mr. Burroughs and bring him onto our live screen. and because we've been waiting for him as our special guest. So folks, put your hands together and let's bring to the screen Mr. Eugene Burroughs. How you doing, sir? I am so glad to see you here. And you know what? It is so apropos that you're here at this time, because guess what? We're talking money. We're talking numbers and all that sort of stuff, where you really want to have somebody who really understands tax preparation, bookkeeping, financial planning, all those sorts of things. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you can take that mask off now. You don't need it. Folks, I'm happy to introduce Mr. Eugene Burroughs, who is a fantastic small business person and just a great person all the way around. He's raised a fantastic family, has a beautiful wife and kids, and he's a guy who's right here. And he's a Virginia resident. So Virginia's happy to have him, and I'm happy to have him on the show. Mr. Burroughs, go on and tell the folks out here a little bit about yourself. We normally go off the air at 8 o'clock, but we're going to extend it a little bit this time, okay? So go ahead and do your thing.
All right. Well, thank you all for waiting. I'm glad to meet each one of y'all. I don't see you, but nice to meet you. And think, I'm from the South. I'm from Georgia.
Okay.
And I joined that John Lewis situation back then, SNCC.
Okay.
And I'm saying it for a reason. Look like we always trying to fight to get ahead. And every time we get to a point, they told us, if you had a high school diploma, you could get this clerk job. Well, when you got the high school diploma this way, you had 1 year college, you'll get it. I mean, the scale just kept moving. But I noticed something, and it's like in the question form, it looked like it gets away from us pretty much all the time. Let's take, for instance, every time we get a new president, he gives a tax bill.
Okay.
Okay, if you're making $100 a week and your taxes is 10%, that's $10. Well, the next president comes and look, hey, I'm gonna do better than that. I'm gonna raise you up to $120 a week, and I'm going to lower your taxes down to 9%. So that sounds favorable, doesn't it? But 9% of 120 is $10.80. 80% of $1 million is a lot of money.
Okay.
But you can't fight him because he came and gave you something. He gave you, hey, look, I'm going to drop it down to 9%. Okay.
Well, it sounds like people said, if you allow me to set the terms, I'll give you any amount of money you want.
Right. Yeah, and just give me, this over here. Yeah. And it's keep going over and over. Okay, the last tax legislation we had, they lowered the rate.
Mm-hmm.
We had an unfavorable president, and he lowered the rate, so he did us a favor, right? He lowered it down to 22%, but he went around the corner and knocked all the blocks from under us. So you end up really paying more. Yeah, and I'm in the church where you pay 10% tithes and 40% taxes. So it doesn't matter how hard you work, 50% of it is gone. Either way you want to look at it.
Well, you know what? That's why it's important. I guess what you're saying, Mr. Burroughs, is that people look at the representatives that they have, and they know, in order to have people who are promoting good policies that are good for their families and their businesses, that they understand that they need to have the right to vote. One, to get the people in there who are offering and explaining to them why we're supporting certain tax policies, what this is going to do for your business, what kind of grants are out there for your kids to go to school where it's not going to break you, or is there health care insurance out there so you don't have to claim bankruptcy because you can't pay, you don't have any health insurance. But who gets the money, how the money is divided, and who it's going to go to help who, all happens through voting rights and policies. So,
Well,
but
I mean, that's all. You know, O.J. Simpson was on trial.
OJ, huh?
Okay. now,
I can
now,
get rid of OJ, huh?
the first lawyer he got wanted to
Mm-hmm.
make sure O.J. laws was not violated. That's all he wanted to do.
Make sure you got due process.
Right, due process.
Right.
That is not what OJ wanted to get off. You know what I'm saying? He needed another direction on this thing, so he hired Johnny Cochran.
Mm-hmm.
See, and all Johnny Cochran needed to do is find one liar in the crowd, and that'll get you off. I didn't say you didn't do it. I just find that one liar for you, and I got paid for it, and we on our way. Yeah,
Well,
I mean, you see how things so easily slip right from under you. And when you get through fighting, it seems like you got nothing
mm-hmm.
after fighting. So, these are a couple of things to figure out here because when I told you John Lewis, so you know I was in the black fighting thing. And then we get a representative down in South Carolina said there is no racism in America.
Well, you said you were you said you're from Georgia and you work with the Student Nonviolent Correlating Commission, which is SNCC.
Right.
And you had some experience with that. And those are probably some interesting stories that maybe some things you can sort of explain to some of the young people and some of the people who weren't watching.
Right.
About what all went with that and why that's important around voting rights and small businesses.
You know, I noticed my mother looked like she took everything. And we younger crowd came to look, no, we ain't going that way. We're going another way with this. We're not going to just lay down and take it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't see nothing right about that per se and things that sort. But one positive thing you can do, though, is follow peace in your own heart. Not try to make peace in another person, but follow in your own heart, because when you get upset, you're not who you are anymore, you know, being upset. And there's enough going on in this world right now to upset you.
Oh, there's always.
Yeah, that's right.
Plenty of things out there trying to ruin your day.
Exactly. And you ever notice you can be doing a good thing, but somebody coming and try to shake that up some kind of way. And that's the enemy's job, to shake you up. You're doing the right thing. You know you're doing the right thing. But he'll make you seem like it means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And things like now you got to turn to another animal now to help explain yourself, kind of thing. Yeah.
If you were going to give people your advice around any of the areas that you have so much experience in around financial planning, taxes, and bookkeeping, and you were giving people some advice, what sort of advice would you give small businesses that you found and individuals that are some of the most important things that they should pay attention to? Just simple stuff they can always follow.
Yeah. Well, one thing, working on a regular job, you know, you want to get ahead. Everybody want to get ahead.
Yeah.
But if you look at it for real, it's not even set up for you to get ahead.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Okay. Take cost of living. Say if cost of living is 10% every year, your raises are not 10% every year. So you're losing right there.
Well, if you're not getting 10% a year in cost of living,
right.
You don't get 10% raises every year. It's more like 2-3%, if that.
Right. And the same one that give you the 2% is the one that raising it 10%. I mean, a long time ago, I used to be a gambler. I used to shoot dice. You find all kind of ways to not do it right.
All kind of ways.
Right. And it's on the big level now. Well, it probably was there then too. That's the same game that goes on.
Right. The same game goes on.
Right. I mean, from Georgia, President Clinton was making $40,000 a year when he got elected president. as a governor out there in Arkansas.
Right.
But when he left, he made $300 million after he left the White House.
Well, it's not so much how much you make. It's okay to make money when you're out of government.
Right.
You don't want people making money while you're in government.
Right. Well, the first thing he did.
That's not what you want to do.
Right. The first thing he did is set up a nonprofit organization.
Absolutely.
He said, look, he has more Republican friends now than ever because what? I'm doing like them now. I won't have to pay taxes.
Well, I think you kind of get into that whole 1%er thing or 2%er or whatever they say. Folks who are in those brackets, depending upon how much money you make, and I don't know all that. I won't act like I do, but just because you may be in a certain financial bracket doesn't necessarily mean that you are acting or supporting the things that those laws are currently set up, where those folks in those brackets have a much better opportunity and pay less taxes than other folks. I think I'm trying to think of the name of the guy. What's his name? I'm trying to think of his name right now. Why am I having Warren Buffett. Yeah. He said, listen, I pay less taxes than my secretary does. He's like, it's not that I don't want to pay more taxes. I'm saying the way it is currently set up.
Right.
The secretary, because of the bracket she is in, because not that she's paying numerically more money, she's paying percentage-wise more money, because if you're running a business and you have all these different type of write-offs and how you actually make your money, and if you're making your money more so through capital gains as opposed to just dollars that someone's paying you, well, you don't have to pull any of that money out or pay any taxes on it until you actually pull it out and use it. But your business is paying for a number of different things that allows you to lead a certain lifestyle. So I mean, that's just
set up your own business and do certain things. That was the point that I was going to make about the last tax legislation. It was for business people.
It was most of the taxes in I guess in a capitalist country are designed for good reason to promote and make it easy or to make it easier, let me put it that way, for businesses to exist. Because if the taxes or if the laws make it difficult to run a business, well, nobody's going to run a business. You're not going to have capitalism, and certainly that's not going to be the case. So,
right, exactly.
If people were saying capitalism has, if you're running a business and that gives you certain tax advantages, then I guess, wouldn't you say that it's probably intelligent to have some sort of side hustle where you have a business where you can at least get some of those advantages?
One way or the other.
One way or the other, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, but the thing is, and that's what I did after the last tax legislation, I sent out a letter immediately saying, I need to fund some of your activities. So I questioned the client and asked them, just tell me what you do on your job and stuff like that, and thing. And then now we're going to make the side hustle a business, Schedule C or something like that. Make it a business, because look at a guy making $250,000 up now having to file a short return. Yeah, because there's the deductions they give you. May just stand deduction 25,000, 26,000. You don't have that many deductions. You don't have that, but your mortgage and your charitable contributions.
Well, most people, as I understand it, Mr. Burroughs, most regular people who are, WT salaried folks who work for folks, they build most of their wealth through their homes that they're able to purchase.
Right.
And if they're fortunate enough to have a 401k, right? And the other part is if they're fortunate enough maybe to work for a company or a government agency that's providing a pension in addition to a 401k, right?
Exactly.
Or at least if you can get a pension. Most people, pensions don't even exist anymore. I know when I first started working for Lockheed Martin back in the day, they had pension plans. But man, I would say probably maybe 2 years into that, working for them back in the mid 90s, they got rid of it. Not because they couldn't afford it, is what I hear of these major companies, as well as nobody else was offering pension plans. So they didn't feel any reason why they had to offer them, because there was no competition for folks
That's
saying,
right.
hey, we got pension plans. What they did was they went to these self-funding plans called 401ks.
Yeah.
so they said, well, we don't have to give anybody pensions. Let them pay for their own. We'll just give a little bit of money to put in there. Now, let me ask you a question, and it's 8:05, so I want to apologize to folks that wanted to leave at 8 o'clock. We're going to stay over at least another 5 minutes or so here with Mr. Burroughs. But let me ask you a question, sir. What do you think is better? Here's a good question for someone in your business. What is best, pensions or 401ks? Which is better for the employee?
Neither one.
Neither
one.
Let me give a disclaimer too. We're not giving advice. We're simply having a discussion. Why do you say that? I've never heard anyone really say that.
Well, everything you name it comes to putting out money. After a while, you don't have nothing left in your pocket. You don't have nothing for your family.
Well,
I mean, look at take basketball players and football players and things. Why do they go on strike?
Why do they call it what?
Why do they go on strike?
Why do players go on? Why does anybody go on strike? People go on strike.
Look, they are making 100 times much money, at the local man.
Well,
they don't have enough money.
Well, wait a minute. I don't see too many professional athletes going on strike. That's a rare thing. But let's give me an example. But wait a minute. I want to make sure
take Emmitt Smith.
You weren't pulling my leg. Are you really telling me you don't believe people should have some sort of retirement savings, pension, or 401k? I know that's not something you agree with.
Well, but the type of economy that we are in,
right,
it's very hard to accumulate any money and keep it.
Okay, well, fair enough. Fair enough.
And things. So they need to create a vehicle that will make them make money and keep money.
And
right, and that's why I was saying the tax laws was for business people. The last time, if you're not in a business, get in one.
Yes, sir.
You'll come out better if you start your own business, picking up cans. You'll make more money doing that than where you working making $100,000 a year.
Okay.
And
hopefully you're saving some of that money for a rainy day or for retirement.
Well, how you gonna save it? You don't have it.
Well, I'm saying if you do have money.
Oh, okay.
Put something away for them. I know you're not.
That's the right principle.
Financial planner. I know you're not telling me that. You gotta save something, man.
Look. Well, let me say this.
Okay.
Is that I was saying about Bill Clinton but take just a regular congressman. He go in there with a little salary.
Yes, sir.
But nearly every one of them come out millionaires.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And guess what? And then one way they do it is they make the laws. Take a mutual fund or something. They have to approve them.
Yeah.
And many times investing in a mutual fund, if you can catch it low when they first come out and ride it on up, because all of them going up.
Yeah.
Just ride that mutual fund right on up. You got some going there. But who get the first snatch of that?
Okay.
The man who approved it.
I got you.
Yeah.
So I think some of the laws that they're making now, and I make no, I agree with you. I don't think you should be making money while you're in the government. However, once you get out, you're free to do what you want. But some of the laws, even that they're passing now, have restricted government folks who are actually elected officials from actually investing in the things that they're passing laws on. It makes sense. But let's change the subject for a minute, if we could. What do you think is the best way for people to build wealth?
Well, just like I say, start some business on the side, and you're making a corporation or something, and and let the corporation make the money, and you live off the benefits. I mean, you own the corporation and things of that sort, and you live off benefits, and the benefits become the expenses of the corporation, and so the corporation is not showing a profit like that.
Okay. Let me ask you another question. And finally, we're going to have to get ready to go here in a couple of minutes because I know we started late with you, but I do want to be able to also ask you about things that you were involved with in your younger days, and you were talking about just things around voting rights like SNCC or the other things and organizations that were fighting for voting rights. Back, I guess at that time, what do you think are some of the things that made the most sense to you that those organizations they're doing back then that we may need to go ahead and do now in order to get voting rights reinstated and to protect all Americans' right to unfettered access to the polls?
You know, right produces what right is.
Okay.
You're on the right road to do something. You're gonna run into some stumbling blocks and things like that, and voting is right. I know that this last election here, and Democrats got out there and said, "Look, let's vote." I mean, you couldn't see your victory there because you got a powerhouse you're coming up against,
Right.
and you're telling me to vote, and our chances of winning is very scarce. But we won.
Yeah, because people got out and voted.
That's right. They got out and voted. That's how strong it is. Whether you see it or not, doing right is right.
Absolutely.
Exercise your right to vote.
You are absolutely right about that.
Yeah. I'm telling you. You remember back in the day, your parents wouldn't even let you out the yard or something. Did I tell you not to go out the yard?
Yeah.
Because it's danger over there. Well, I'm not doing so much over here. Well, but it's just right that you stay in your yard, though. And things you're protected over in your yard.
Well, I also know a little bit about you, and I know you're a very strong Christian. And when they talk about things preventing people in certain states, like souls to the polls, where people would go to church, and then after church, they would organize, and voting polls would be open on Sundays. So they would close the polls on Sundays so people couldn't leave church and go to vote.
Yeah, exactly.
So, how do you feel about that? Give me a little feedback on it. Does that make any sense to you?
You just like I say, it's a mindset.
Right.
Now, I was fighting, and me and Jackson and everybody would come from South, come to North, come to North. But when I got here, I said, you can't keep going like this because it's just gonna get all us killed up and nothing done.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but I got to stay in the fight now, and I don't plan on losing. I need a winner.
Yes, sir.
From the get-go, and I know it's a sacrifice and things like that, but this is the way it's done. You see how great Dr. Martin Luther King's name is still now.
Yes, sir.
Because he put the fight on in a peaceful manner.
That's
I mean, you had both sides, felt that, because. But that's a great sacrifice. Now you got to make up your mind. Yeah, to get in the fight, but you're gonna have to do it this way, even in political stuff, in your workforce, and all this other kind of stuff. Not just identify the wrong you've done today, but you got to keep your strength up and going in a peaceful manner. You can't resort to the enemy's way.
Yes, sir.
You ain't got nothing going there. Definitely, we can see that. If somebody said to me, "Well, they got all the guns, they got all this, and got all of that."
It don't matter.
Right. It don't matter. That thing to sort. You have to. This is the way you stay in the fight.
Well,
yeah, and I explained to my children that sacrificing is the way.
Well,
see, somebody have to lose a life to get a life.
Well, in a movement, it requires sacrifice.
That's right. It
requires sacrifice. Think about what people did back in Birmingham when they didn't ride buses there for over a year, where people were giving other folks rides. They were walking to work. they were sacrificing. The movement,
Exactly.
of course, it's not a freebie. It's not like social media where it's instant gratification like the internet. If you're going to believe in something, and you're looking at what Gandhi did with the nonviolent protest in India, with Martin Luther King, who emulated nonviolent protesting here in the United States during the Civil Rights Movement, you know, people sacrifice things. And you're an elder, Mr. Burroughs, and I'm gonna. We're 8:15, so I'm 15 minutes over. I'm going to end in a minute here, but you tell me, and you know, what do you believe is something that you can leave young people with, and you can leave folks with the most important thing that they need to get out there and do in order to make sure we secure voting rights for all Americans and that they get what they want out of their lives? What is the best bit of advice you can give them? At least right now, what you can give me in a couple of minutes.
Hey, make up your mind. I think I sent you a clip on planning. Make up your mind what you want and what you're get, and the Bible tell you to count the cost.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And Dr. King said, one day my children will enjoy what I'm doing. And they've been following through it, and we've been following through.
Okay.
And things that sort. But just like I say, I can't lose. So I need a strategy that make sure I win.
Well, folks, you guys have heard it here, and you've heard the words of Mr. Eugene Burroughs, who is a fantastic family man, who is a fantastic individual. You know, we're getting ready to end the show. A little 15 minutes over. Saying, could you be loved? We want to love you. And Mr. Burroughs, we're going to have you back on the show. I want to have you back on again. Thank you so much for being on, and we'll see you next time on the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show live. Could you be loved? Thank you, sir. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right.
Don't have to fool you.